Gonzaga's point guard play has been exceptional this decade, and that will continue with Braeden Smith taking over in 2025-26.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And folks, if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. Well, it is number 5 today in our player preview series, talking about every single player on Gonzaga's roster. We're talking about their history, how they ended up here in Spokane. We're talking about their best and worst case scenarios for this upcoming season. And then we're going to close out the show talking about expected role, expected production, and their future with Gonzaga. Today, we are talking point guard Braeden Smith. We've been kind of focused on the bigs and the point guards up to this point because trying to do a player projection for anybody playing the wing spot is a tad difficult as we still await an update on the status of Tyon Grant-Foster's eligibility for this upcoming season. So we've talked about Parker Jefferson and we've talked about Ismaila Diani in the front court. We talked about Mario Saint-Supery in the backcourt as well. So been kind of focused, and Braden Huff, been focused on that front court, been focused on those guards, and that will continue today with who we presume to be Gonzaga's starting point guard this upcoming season, Braeden Smith, 6 foot, 175-pound guard from Seattle Prep High School in Seattle, Washington. Like for those of you who listened to yesterday's episode on Wednesday, we did our ranked the 15 greatest Zags in the Mark Few era from the state of Washington. Braeden Smith not on the list yet because he has not played for Gonzaga, but certainly could do enough even this year to be in that conversation. He was not a highly regarded recruit out of high school. In fact, most of the recruiting around him was football focused and not basketball focused. He had an offer to play football at Air Force, had a lot less attention on him as a basketball player, but did opt to go the basketball route and went all the way across the country from Seattle, Washington out to central New York to go play for Colgate in the Patriot League, and was immediately impactful for Colgate. He spent his freshman and sophomore years there. His freshman year was back in 22-23, and he started every single game for Colgate, was a day one starter right out of the chute for that team, and averaged 11.5 points, 4.5 assists, 4 rebounds, and just over 1 steal per game. He played 31.5 minutes as a true freshman point guard at that level. Just, again, so many similarities in a lot of ways to Ryan Nembhard. We'll talk about that more later in the show, but certainly the ability to be an immediately impactful player as a freshman playing over 30 minutes per night. That's what both Nembhards did at Florida and Creighton, and that's what Smith did here at Colgate. Shot 54% on 2-pointers, shot 36% from 3 on about 3 attempts per game. And again, I was not kidding when I said immediately impactful. His first official game in a Colgate uniform was a true road game against Buffalo, and he went out and hung 20 points on the Bison with 8 boards, 3 assists, and a pair of steals later in that non-conference slate against a very good Auburn team on the road. Smith had 17 points, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, and shot 7 of 10 from the field. He helped lead Colgate to a 17-1 season in conference play, as well as a berth in the NCAA tournament. He had 11 points, 6 assists, 6 boards in the championship game against Lafayette of the Patriot League tournament. And then as a 15 seed, Colgate lost to 2-seeded Texas. Not as impactful in that game, 6 points, 4 boards, and 2 steals, but still had a huge role in them even being in the NCAA tournament as a freshman. He was also named to the Patriot League all-freshman team and then returned as a sophomore. And not only he was up on the freshman team, but was not the freshman of the year. But as a sophomore, he was the player of the year. He was on the Patriot League first team, but also the player of the year in the conference. Started all 35 games, played 30 minutes a game again, bumped his numbers up to 12.5 points, 5.5 assists, 5.5 rebounds, and about 2 steals per game. The efficiency did drop a little bit for Smith, which is not a huge shock. He went from 54% on about 5.5 2-point attempts per game to 45% on a few more attempts per game. 3-point percentage dropped from 36 to 31. Free throw percentage dropped a little bit as well, but he was scoring more points. He was passing the ball more without the turnovers coming up in a major way. He got more rebounds. He got more steals. He led the Patriot League in total assists, in total steals, and in assists per game. And he had, again, some remarkable performances, even against power conference teams. We saw him put up a near triple-double on the road against Syracuse. That was, I think, the second game of the season. Smith had 14 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists in what was just a 4-point loss to the Orange in that game. He was also excellent again in the Patriot League tournament, had 12 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds against Holy Cross, and then had 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists against Bucknell. And then in the championship game, 15 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists. Again, 12, 8, and 7 were his rebounding totals for a 6-foot point guard in a conference tournament. I think that is worth noting that Braeden Smith, while we will compare him to Ryan in a lot of ways, Braeden Smith was at least statistically a far better rebounder. Again, obviously the caveat being the Patriot League here, but still some impressive rebounding numbers from the diminutive guard. He once again led Colgate to the NCAA tournament. They were a 14 seed in his sophomore year. He had 10 points, 4 boards, 2 steals, shot 2 of 5 from 3 in their loss to 3-seeded Baylor. Worth pointing out that Braeden Smith is purely a winner. We have seen this demonstrably from him in his career. In 2 conference seasons at Colgate, Braeden Smith played 36 games, and they went 33-3 in those 36 games, 17-1 his first year, 16-2 in his second year. Smith was the architect and the leader and the straw that stirred the drink for a team that won 90+% of their games across 2 seasons. Yes, again, Patriot League, we'll keep mentioning that, but you want a player, if you're going to bring in a new point guard, you want somebody who comes in having that winning pedigree, and there is zero debate that Braeden Smith throughout his career has been a winner through and through, and we'll look to see that continue at Gonzaga this upcoming season. He transferred to Gonzaga back in May of 2024 after entering the transfer portal in April. It was like a little less than a month later that he ended up committing to Gonzaga, and it was known right out of the gate when Braeden Smith committed that his plan was to redshirt for that upcoming season. There was never really any mystery, not even like a week of time where everybody was like, well, what are they going to do with Nembhard and Smith? Like, it was pretty much immediately established. Braeden Smith's plan throughout the recruiting process was to come to Gonzaga with the intention of redshirting, sitting behind Ryan Nembhard and Nolan Hickman and Caliph Battle in that backcourt and learning the ropes, being a sponge, soaking up all the information that he can from Nembhard in particular, and getting ready to then take over as Gonzaga's point guard heading into this upcoming 2025-26 season. I think Mark Few saw the challenges that even a great player like Ryan Nembhard had in the first half of his first season at Gonzaga after transferring from Creighton. And he realized, I don't want overlap seasons where when we have a new guard coming in who hasn't played in the system, that there's going to be this kind of awkward, uncomfortable time where they're still trying to figure out the role. Because in this continuous motion offense where you're asked to do a lot, navigate a lot of pick and rolls, make a lot of tough passes at times, like it's not an easy offense to learn. And so I think the staff really valued the ability to get somebody in who would be able to step into that role right away and have that familiarity, that comfort in the system, which kind of leads us to the question of how impactful is that going to be for Braeden Smith this upcoming season? Is he, as a player who has had excellent 20+ point games right out of the gate and in his first 2 seasons at Colgate, are we going to see him be excellent immediately for Gonzaga in the non-conference slate? Is it going to take some time? Could he get challenged for that starting spot by freshman guard Mario Saint-Supery? That and more coming up in our best and worst case scenario segment in just a second. But first, folks, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. And if you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make this whole process even smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Well, folks, we are in the thick of the NFL season, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can get, if you bet just $5, you'll get $300 in bonus bets if that bet wins. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets that you can use all across the app. And when you use FanDuel, whether it's parlays or player props or even jumping in on the action live, it makes watching football even more exciting since you got a little bit riding on the action. So whether you're a casual fan or you love diving deep into the stats, FanDuel makes that game day experience so much better. We've been talking about it. The Zags preseason national championship odds are at plus 3,500. If you think this is the year, Zags going out of the WCC on top, then what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. And we are still doing our player preview episode discussing Gonzaga's new point guard, Braeden Smith, the Colgate transfer who redshirted this past season. If you are a longtime listener to Locked On Zags, or if you are just a listener over the last couple of weeks, but you've been catching the player preview episodes, you know that we have a couple caveats here when talking about the best case and worst case scenario. The best case is within reason. The worst case is without injury, meaning that if your best case scenario truly is to win the Wooden Award and be the first overall pick in the NBA draft, then great. We will talk about that. For most players, that's not super realistic, so we're going to try to keep it within the realm of what we consider realistic for said player. And then worst case for every player is that they get injured and miss the year. If injuries are a relevant part of a player's history, we will discuss them. Otherwise, they will not be discussed as part of the worst case scenario because it's not very interesting and doesn't really add anything to the conversation. Start with Braeden Smith here. The best case scenario for Smith is that he is the team's starting point guard from day one. He holds on to that job all season long, and he leads this team in minutes per game. I'm not sure that that is even a particularly bold prediction for Braeden Smith, but it is certainly the first place to start when looking at what his best case scenario is this year, is that he is on the floor more than anybody else. And while it doesn't mean he will be the team's best player, that very likely will be Graham Ike, could be Braden Huff, but we've seen the way that those players' minutes are utilized, and it seems very likely that Braeden Smith will be the team's leader in total minutes played and minutes per game. And in the best case scenario for him, it's not even close. He is very clearly that guy. The best case scenario for Braeden Smith is that the similarities to Ryan Nembhard are more apparent than the differences. It's not fair to compare these players straight across. They are not the same player in a lot of ways. And certainly Ryan was extraordinary, exceptional, elite, particularly as a facilitator and as a passer. But in a best case scenario for Braeden Smith, the conversation around him this season is not, oh, look at what he's not able to do. Look at what he couldn't do that Ryan could do. But the conversation is, look at how similar this is. Or, wow, that's the kind of pass Ryan used to make. When you come off a screen in the pick and roll and you're able to weave a bounce pass to Graham or Braden that it seems like nobody else could have even seen, and Braden's getting that ball right in the breadbasket for an easy 2 points at the cup, and we're thinking, wow, we weren't sure we were going to have another point guard who could do that after Ryan left, and now we do. That's the best case scenario for Braeden Smith, is that he is elite at running the pick and roll in the half court offense, that when Gonzaga is in their half court sets and he is coming off those screens, he is making the right read, he is making the right pass. whether it's having to, again, kind of shove a really tight pass in there to Graham or Braden down low, whether it's taking the ball all the way to the rim and getting 2 points at the cup, whether it's stepping back, hitting a jump shot, hitting Braden or Graham on a pick and pop. He's consistently making the right reads, consistently opening up the floor for his teammates with elite floor vision and timely passes. The best case scenario for Braeden Smith is that he is a hellraiser in transition. One of the elite skills possessed by both of the Nembhard brothers over the last half decade at Gonzaga was the ability to get an outlet pass and go, push the pace, push the tempo. Mark Few and the Zags have always liked to run. They've always wanted to be one of the top tempo teams in the country. That's why they scored 85, 90 plus points per game, is because they are highly efficient in the half court, but also because they get out and go as much as they can. And in a best case scenario for Braeden Smith, he continues that trend when he's getting outlet passes, or because he's a solid rebounder, when he's getting his own rebounds getting rebounds, he's going out and getting that ball out, getting out in transition, scoring easy points in 5 to 7 seconds or less on the shot clock consistently. The best case scenario for Braeden Smith is that the Ryan Woolridge effect is fully in effect this season. For those who do not know, the Ryan Woolridge effect is what I have deemed the continuing trend of players transferring to Gonzaga and improving, oftentimes dramatically, as three-point shooters. It's named, of course, after Ryan Woolridge, who was here about half decade ago, after 3 years at North Texas, transferred to Gonzaga. His 3 years with the Mean Green, he was about a 33% shooter. In 1 year at Gonzaga, he shot 42% from three, primarily because Gonzaga's offense there was so much gravity on that team, Filip Petrusev, but Gonzaga's offense always has so many defenders focused on the front court that for guards who are used to being the first option on their teams, like Smith was, are now the third or fourth option offensively, gives them more opportunities to shoot open threes, knock them down at a higher clip. Malachi Smith shot better at Gonzaga. Rasir Bolton shot better at Gonzaga. Obviously, Ryan Woolridge shot better at Gonzaga. It is a pretty consistent thing that happens for guard transfers. And in a best case scenario for Smith, he's a 40+% three-point shooter, at least 38+%, much better than the 31 he was in his sophomore year at Colgate. The best case scenario for Braeden Smith is that his size doesn't limit him too much as a point of attack defender. There is not a world where Braeden Smith is like an elite on-ball defender because he is 6 feet tall. It just is limiting. Really, the best case for him defensively probably doesn't look that different than Ryan Nembhard, who worked really hard defensively and was good when he was able to, when he wasn't at a size disadvantage against his opponents, but was limited because, again, he was only 6 feet tall. There's just only so much that he could do. Smith will not be the best perimeter attack defender on this team. He will not be the best point of attack defender or overall perimeter defender. That'll be Jalen Worley or Emmanuel Inocente. But in the best case scenario for Smith, he more than holds his own against good guards in the non-conference and in conference play. And then finally, the best case scenario for Braeden Smith is that he is excellent at playing alongside Mario Saint-Supery. Some of this is going to depend on Mario, of course, but that when they are on the floor together, it feels like those Gonzaga teams that had two elite point guards, the Jalen Suggs and Andrew Nembhards, the Nigel Williams-Goss and Josh Perkins. These two play well off of each other, can both seamlessly transition into handling the basketball and playing on the ball. Smith can also play off the ball so that Mario can get some of those on-ball reps, and it feels seamless and flawless and just consistent from both of these guys. The best case scenario for Braeden Smith is that he leads the WCC in assists and steals, just like he did in his final season at Colgate. He is a first-team player on the All-WCC team, and he is unquestionably the best point guard in the conference. And that we are ecstatic as fans that he is coming back for his senior year and are super excited to see him lead the Pac-12, lead Gonzaga in their first year in the Pac-12 at the point guard position. Let's talk worst case scenarios for Braeden Smith. Really, it's that despite a year in the system, despite having what should be a leg up in terms of being prepared to run this offense, the adjustment still takes time. It kind of looks like the first half of Ryan Nembhard's first year at Gonzaga, where he wasn't bad, but he was not the player that he ended up being the last half of that season and all of his senior year, where he was a little bit less confident. The passes weren't always there. He was struggling to know when to shoot, when to pass. And that's what Smith's year looks like early on, is that he's just a little bit lost. He's a little bit, you can see he's still trying to iron out some of the kinks in this offense as the season goes on. The worst case scenario for Braeden Smith is that he's trying too hard to be Ryan Nembhard. He's making bad passes. He's trying to get too fancy with them. He's pressing, and you can see it and you can feel it, that he's putting too much pressure on himself, and the staff needs to tell him to calm down, whether because he feels like he has really big shoes to fill, or he feels like maybe Mario is creeping up on him and he's putting a little bit of extra pressure on himself, and you can feel that tension in the games. The worst case scenario for Braeden Smith is that he's not able to facilitate for the bigs as well as they need him to, and that the offense has to adjust. Similar to a couple years ago when Gonzaga didn't really have a point guard because Nolan Hickman wasn't playing that role the way that Gonzaga needed him to. And so Drew Timme just sort of became Gonzaga's point guard and was bringing the ball up and getting the ball at the top of the key and just operating on his own because Gonzaga didn't have players who could get him the basketball. The worst case scenario for Braeden Smith is that Graham and Braden Huff have to do that this year, or that Mario has to do that and Smith ends up getting relegated to a much smaller role. The worst case scenario for Braeden Smith is that the outside shot is just not there. Teams go under on screens and force him to shoot the way they did to Ryan in the first half of his first year, and Smith shooting 30%, under 30% even from three in his first season in Spokane. And that he's too limited defensively by his size. He gets worked by bigger guards. He struggles even against similar sized guards, and it makes him a liability in certain matchups and in endgame situations when Gonzaga could really use him on the floor. The worst case scenario for Braeden Smith is not necessarily the worst case scenario for Gonzaga in this specific example, but it's that he gets outplayed by Mario. That sooner rather than later, Mario Saint-Supery is the team's primary point guard. Either he full on replaces Smith in the starting lineup, or he ends up maybe replacing Miller in the starting lineup, but playing more at the one. Or it's just that Smith gets relegated to the bench and does not play as big of a role this season as we thought he would. Again, if both are playing well and Mario is just playing better and takes the role, that's the best case scenario for Gonzaga, unquestionably. But the worst case scenario for Smith is that Mario replaces him, and it's less to do with what Mario's doing and more to do with what Smith is not doing. The worst case scenario for Smith is that we're not really all that confident in what his role is going to look like as a senior. There's more conversation around, is Smith going to start as a senior? Is Mario's for sure going to start? Are they both going to start? Is Smith going to come off the bench? And there's even maybe rumblings of, is he going to even spend his senior year in Spokane with Mario in and with Jack Hale coming in from Germany? There's some real question about Smith's future in Spokane after just one season on the floor for the Zags. Well, how do we expect Smith to perform in his final season on the court, or in his first season on the court for Gonzaga? What are the realistic role, realistic expectations? What does his future look like in Spokane? We're going to get into all of that coming up in just a second. But first, folks, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, we know athletes are sweating all the detail. And Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every make and model. You can feel that incredible Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Because with Mazda, everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like Gonzaga players, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, folks, segment 3, still any Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. We are closing out the show and closing out the Braeden Smith player preview episode here, talking about realistic role and expectations. We talked about Smith's history, his 2 years at Colgate, his red shirt year last year for the Zags. Then we talked about his best and worst case scenarios for this upcoming season. Now we're going to take a look at kind of the middle spot, what we think is the most likely outcome for Smith entering his first year on the floor for Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I will start with this. I would be stunned if Braeden Smith is not the day one starter for Gonzaga this year. Recently, we did our Mario Saint-Supery season preview, and I echoed that same sentiment despite a recent article coming out by ESPN that projected Saint-Supery to start over Braeden Smith. I do not think that is particularly likely. I will say, and this is an important note for both of these players, a recent interview, more recent than that ESPN article, a recent interview by Mark Few with John Rothstein on the Inside College Basketball podcast. He was asked about Mario and about the playing time situation at point guard, and Few was more willing to say that Mario is going to play a lot of minutes at the point guard spot than he had been previously. Back in July, when the great Theo Lawson talked to Mark Few at Summer League, Few kind of said, well, we think Mario can play both on and off the ball. He said he's going to play. He's going to play a role this year, but he's going to be able to play both on and off the ball. And in this conversation with John, Mark Few said, Mario's going to push Braeden Smith. That was his direct quote. He's going to push him. And that he views both of them as being able to play significant minutes at the point guard position. So my long-held belief that I have talked about multiple times on this show is that the majority of Mario's minutes are probably going to come off the ball, especially early in the season, because of the limited amount of time that Saint-Supery has spent in Spokane with his teammates learning how to run this offense. I still believe a lot of that is true, but I also am going to take Mark Few at his word that Mario is going to play a significant role on the ball. I don't think this necessarily is a diminishing role for Braeden Smith. And in fact, in the same interview, Mark Few was very complimentary about Smith, about the work he put in as a redshirt last year, and about the role he's going to have this year. So it didn't seem to be a negative regarding Braeden Smith whatsoever, just a sign that Mario might be more ready to play true on-ball reps right away at Gonzaga. I still believe that Braeden Smith will be the starter, and I still believe that Braeden Smith will be this team's leader in minutes per game. I think that feels very secure at this point based on how Mark Few typically runs his rotations, based on the fact that there is a ton of depth on the wing, based on the fact that Graham Ike and Braden Huff don't typically play more than 25 minutes per game. I think we will see Braeden Smith settle into a role where he is the starting point guard playing 30 to 32 minutes per game. I think every minute Smith's not on the floor, Mario is playing point guard for the most part. I think the Jalen Worley point guard thing is less likely to happen. But I do think that Mario will also play a lot of minutes alongside Braeden Smith on the floor. And in those minutes, I think you will see them kind of handling the ball a bit interchangeably. I think it'll still mostly be Smith, but I think there might be matchups or situations where Mario ends up being more on the ball. So I that doesn't really change my Smith projection as much as it's an important note of like Mario's role might not be exactly what we thought it was going to be coming into the season. In terms of production and numbers for Smith, I actually don't think it'll look that different than what he put up in his 2 seasons at Colgate. I think it'll be with better efficiency. And I think it might be a little like he was 12.5 points. I think he's probably not going to be quite there for Gonzaga, just because, especially if Grant Foster is eligible, because just he's going to take a lot of shots in this offense. But I could see Braeden Smith somewhere around like 9 to 10 points per game, 5 to 6 assists per game, 1.5 steals per game. All that's pretty close to what he put up at Colgate. But again, I think 3-point shooting wise, you'd love to see him closer to that 36 that he was as a freshman than that 31 as a sophomore. I think he's going to be 36 plus, maybe even 37, 38 from 3. 55-ish% on 2s because he's going to get a lot of opportunities out in transition, 80-ish% from the free throw line. I think that all should be enough for him to be at least on the All-WCC second team, if not on the All-WCC first team. He should be one of those 2. He'll be in the conversation for newcomer of the year, transfer of the year, whatever they call it. I don't think it'll end up being him. There's a lot of great players coming into this conference, and I think even his teammates, Grant Foster, if he's eligible, or Adam Miller will be in the mix for that as well. But I think he should be taking home some hardware after his first year with Gonzaga. And in terms of his future, this will be Smith's junior year. He'll academically be a senior this year, but junior year because he played 2 years at Colgate and then sat out last year. So he will have 2 years of eligibility this year and the first year of Gonzaga being in the Pac-12 in 26-27. And I think a lot of his future in Spokane is going to be predicated not only on what he does this year, of course, but also what Mario does this year. If Mario makes it so clear that he needs to be the starting point guard in 26-27, I don't think that means Smith leaves necessarily, but it makes me wonder if he is comfortable playing more off the ball, if they split those reps, if that works for everybody. I'm not sure. I think there is a bit of a question mark about how that works because Gonzaga is also bringing in German guard Jack Cahill, who's already 19 years old, who's going to be 20 by the time he gets on campus. And Cahill's probably more off the ball, but can play on-ball reps as well. So I'll be interested to see what Braeden Smith looks like as a senior. The best case scenario is that he and Mario both look excellent this year and that both of them come back because, again, Adam Miller's done after this year. Grant Foster, if he even plays this year, is done after this year. So you're going to have some room. Jalen Worley's done after this year. So you're going to have some room. You're going to have opportunities for those guys to play. And Enchente will be back. Davis Fogel will be back. Jack Cahill will be in the mix. Unclear on Steele Venters. He should have more eligibility. So if he wants to come back, he will come back after this year as well. So there's going to be some talent in that backcourt regardless. But I think Smith will have a big role as the team transitions into the Pac-12 in 2026-27. And then last, for every player, I also talk about their kind of pro prospects, their NBA future. It's unfortunate, but for Smith, his size is too much of a limiting factor for there to be much of an NBA profile here. Ryan Nembhard's the same size. He had to have a literal record-breaking season, and he still didn't get drafted. Now he's going to be an NBA player, and he is going to be an NBA player because he racked up 300-plus assists last year and has an older brother who is succeeding in the NBA. That's not to say that Ryan's only getting there because of nepotism. That's not the case, but it's a really tough path to be under 6'2" and make the NBA at all. And I would be very surprised. Braeden Smith would have to, he'd pretty much have to do what Nembhard did. He'd have to have a record-breaking season as a passer while also shooting 40% from three. I just don't see that. I think Braeden Smith will have a lucrative professional basketball career if he wants it. It's just not likely going to happen in the United States. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, a special shout out to those everyday listeners as well. We're going to be back with one more show this week on Friday, getting you ready for Gonzaga's exhibition game against Northwest University, an NAIA school in Kirkland, Washington. That game is on Sunday, so we'll have a big preview of that matchup, what we'll be looking for on Friday's show. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.